Sherab. He's at the end of his Australian leg of his world tour. Geshe travels for 6 months of the year. Another 6 months of the year he's based in the US. So you're so fortunate to have Geshe here. You know, I won't dwell on for too long, but Geshe was come up through Kopan Monastery, which some of you might have visited, and before going on to further studies in Sherab. So yeah, so fortunate to have Geshe here tonight. So thank you so much.
We begin by acknowledging the wonderful Lunar people, traditional custodians on the land on which we meet, and pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples everywhere. So we'll be making an offering of body, spirit, and mind. Los on to one doje cham, tempo Geshe to Sherab, Ozana ne tache, los on to Jabo, and Pashu lay on fishing, Mamo, to say, on fishing, so. Jene daso, Roa, Mother, not pay, not pay, sing, Chela, to say, what tempo, what
So, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And, I would like to start with a short breathing exercise, followed by generating the intention, motivation for being here. Okay. So for a few moments, just try to make yourself relaxed, comfortable. And feel the weight of your body on cushion. And watch your breath mindfully. And as you breathe in, being aware you are breathing in. As you breathe out, being aware you are breathing out. Simply just watching and being aware. Then we can try to cultivate good intention, motivation. For example, by thinking, by us coming here together, giving our precious time, energy, resource. May all these become cause and condition to transform our mind or heart. So we can be a better person, more enlightened. And may it be cause and conditions to achieve our highest potential, the fully awakened state, as soon as possible. So we can be most and greatest benefit to each and every sentient being. Then we do the refuge and walk Sutra. Right? 看见对对那种人，到我们这方面的，这肯定是这个，我他们这老走。So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming today. And today's topic is why why we decide study and practice on this particular very well-known sutra, Heart Sutra. Heart Sutra is one of the most common sutra that has commonly been recited in all the different Mahayana traditions. And it is one of the sutra that has been most studied and recited and practiced. So why and what is the benefit of that? So we can talk a little bit about that today, and tomorrow we can actually go through the Heart Sutra itself. In one of another Prasnaparamitra Sutra, known as the Dhammakarta Sutra, the Buddha explained in that sutra if anyone, fill this whole universe with all kind of precious jewels, 7 type of precious jewels, and if we make offering to the Buddhas, how much merit we create is something immeasurable, incredible amount of merit one will create. But even so, if someone recite or study even just 4 lines or 1 verses from Prasnaparamita Sutra, the merit created is even more than the previous merit. The positive merit or positive seed or virtuous karma, will be even much more bigger. So therefore, is this deciding, writing, memorizing, studying, contemplating on the Heart Sutra is incredible, powerful way to create merit and incredible, powerful way to purify. In one of the other teachings, it says, among, And why we need the positive seed or virtuous karma or merit? Because, we want success in our life, isn't it? We want success in our life on mountain level as well as on our spiritual level. In order to have a good health, it is not enough just to have the good genes from your parent and to have a good lifestyles, right diet, life exercise, whatever we need to keep ourselves healthy. These are causes that help us to be healthy, external causes, but it is not just enough. On top of that, we need the positive karma, the merit, positive seeds. Together, these internal cause and conditions of merit and external cause and condition that described, then it helps us to have, or just to give an example of good health. Otherwise, if you don't have enough merit, the positive karma, you can have good genes from your parent, you can do everything right externally, still you can have a health problem. Still you can have a health problem and not have a good health. So there's nothing missing from externally, but something missing internally. And that is the positive karma, the merit. That's why we need. Same for the success of our relationship, for the success of our business, our financial state. Of course, there are other external causes and conditions that we need to gather to have all, but also we need to gather the internal cause and conditions, the merit, the positive karma, the seed. Same with our spiritual growth and spiritual realizations. In order to have a spiritual progress, spiritual growth and realizations, not only we need to contemplate and meditate. Of course, we need to contemplate and meditate, but on top of that, we need the support of conducive conditions. That is the merit, the virtues, the positive karma. So therefore, and by relying on such as the Heart Sutra, Prasnaparamita Sutra, such as Heart Sutra, as Buddha explained, is a very powerful way to, accumulate incredible amount and powerful amount of merit or virtues, seeds, which we need very much. Also internal purifications, that you find in the sutras and in all others, there are many different practices to purify, our obstacles, purify obstacles in our life, obstacles for our spiritual growth, our spiritual progress, our spiritual realizations, to purify them, and there are many different practice method, especially in Shantideva's writings and in all the numberings. They recommend 5 powerful way of practice. 6, sorry. And among them, one of the main is meditating on emptiness. Meditating on emptiness, on the emptiness of the negative karma itself, the emptiness of the person who is creating negative karma, the act of creating the negative karma itself. So when you meditate on emptiness of that, is one of the most powerful way to purify. Such meditations on emptiness, together with the co-opening power, when you bring that, then it becomes extremely powerful purifications. And we need a purification to cleanse and purify obstacles, whatever obstacle there might be. So it's a very powerful way to accumulate merit, very powerful way to purify the obstacles, because we need to overcome all the obstacles. As well as part of those 6 practices, another practice is reciting the sutras, and So Heart Sutra, reciting Heart Sutra, part of purifications, as well. And also it is explained, it's a very powerful way for protections. One of the most powerful way to protections is meditation on emptiness. And it is said there is no more, it is a peerless protections. Most powerful protection is meditation on emptiness. And this Heart Sutra, explain about emptiness, how to cultivate the emptiness, and by cultivating how to cultivate the wisdom realizing the emptiness, and through cultivating the wisdom realizing the emptiness, how we can make progress on the path to enlightenment. And so again, therefore is very powerful protections as well. Therefore, in the monastery, when we went to monastery, especially those bigger monasteries, learning institutions, Sherab and all these monasteries, part of our curriculum in our studies is there are a lot of practice for purifications and accumulation of merit, because for the success of the practice, for the success of your study, for the success of your practice, for success of your spiritual progress, you need to purify a lot of obstacles. You need to gather a lot of conducive conditions, virtues, positive seeds or the merit, And part of that is, recitation of the Heart Sutra and meditating on that. In every sessions, like we have morning, debate sessions, evening debate sessions, some days, every session we start with 7-time recitation of Heart Sutra. Some days 3 times, but 3 times is kind of minimum you recite, one of the practice is that. And then, during certain time, you recite very slowly so that you can contemplate on that. In Tibet, they used to say, and here we don't recite that slowly so much now, because we don't have the same patience. But in Tibet, the moment they start Heart Sutras, it is said someone can go to Lhasa and come back and still not finish it one time. And that would means, a couple of, at least hour to finish one. And not to lose that tradition, we do once a year. But in Tibet, they used to do more. And so the point is not just recite, you recite very slowly, really contemplating, meditating on that. And even here, nowadays, when we recite 3 times or 7 times, we don't recite so quickly, not as slow as like that one, but still slowly, so you can really, while you recite, you contemplate and meditate as much as possible on the meaning of the meaning of the sutra, the teaching on emptiness. And that is part of purifying or cleansing the whatever obstacles there might be, external, internal obstacles, so that you can have a correct realization of emptiness and all other spiritual experience or realizations. So when we have any obstacles, is good to, and also that is why, if you have noticed traditionally, before we start any kind of teachings, empowerment, oral transmission always start with the recitation of the Sutra. Why they do that? So to clear whatever obstacle there might be, if there is any possibility of obstacles, to clear those obstacles, to create the protections, and of course create a merit part of that. So traditionally, that is how, if you really understand, then then we will be, understanding why we spend so much time on reciting all this. Otherwise, it feels like we're wasting time. But when you understand meaning and how to do it properly, you don't just recite, but you try to contemplate and meditate as much as you can while you are reciting it. Then it is very, very, just reciting itself very powerful, but to be able to contemplate is even more powerful on the meaning of the words that we recite. And then, most important, the main purpose of studying this Heart Sutra is to meditate and contemplate on the meaning of the Heart Sutra, the subject of that Heart Sutra. The subject of that Heart Sutra is the emptiness. So the main purpose of studying, learning, and contemplating, meditating on emptiness, so we can develop, we can cultivate wisdom realizing emptiness. So we can develop and cultivate the wisdom realizing emptiness. Why is that so important? Why is that so important? Buddha explained in one of the sutras, is the Devon there is clarifying the thought of the sutras, and it is part of the third turning wheel of the Dharma. Within the Buddha's teachings, then there's third turning. Some of the teachings are part of the first turning wheel of the Dharma. Some sutra are part of the second turning wheel of the Dharma, which Heart Sutra is part of that. And there are some sutra which are part of the third turning wheel of the Dharma. And within that, one of the sutra is that clarifying the thought of sutra. And because in the first turning wheel of the Dharma, Buddha explained certain objects or phenomena to exist inherently. And then in the second turning wheel of the Dharma, he said all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, as he said, Sutta. So some of the audience, disciples, got confused what he said in first turning wheel of Dharma and second turning wheel of Dharma. And then to clarify that confusions, why he said in the first sutra what we said, and in second what he said, meaning of them, and then that is in this particular sutra, that's what clarifying his thought of first and second, where he seems like contradictions, but it's not contradiction. So clarifying that in that, so in this sutra, Buddha explained, so you understood that? So in that sutra, Buddha said, due to not realizing or understanding the emptiness, which is peaceful and non-produce, due to not understanding of that, the sentient beings continue to circle in the samsara. Therefore, those who have great compassion taught emptiness with so many different reasoning and logics in so many different ways. Because that is the key. Understanding emptiness is key to free from the samsara and the suffering of all the samsara. Of course, nobody wants suffering, isn't it? We know no one wants suffering. If you don't want suffering, it's not enough to have wish not to suffer. Just wishing not to suffer doesn't go away the sufferings or stop the sufferings. You have to stop creating cause and condition that lead to sufferings. You have to stop creating cause and condition that lead to problem, the sufferings. The problem, the suffering, from Buddhist point of view, is our own actions, our own unskillful, unwholesome actions. No one creates your suffering. Your own actions is the creator of your own suffering, your own problem. In the same way, your happiness is also created by your own actions, your own wholesome, skillful actions. So in order to not to have to stop problem and suffering, you have to stop such unskillful, unwholesome action. To stop such unwholesome, unskillful actions, you have to stop the mind, the afflictive emotions or delusional mind that make us to create such actions. Because as long as I have anger, I will act the anger and create the actions. If I don't have anger, I don't have to act anger, out of anger. And therefore, you don't create the actions that come because of the anger. And when you don't act out of anger, you don't hurt yourself, you don't hurt others. You don't suffer yourself, you don't make others suffer. So just to give one example of those afflictive emotions as anger. Same with all the different afflictive emotions. So in order to stop those afflictive emotions, because as long as we have those afflictive emotions, the moment one of those afflictive emotions arises, immediately, sometimes I call instant karma, immediately, your inner peace is disturbed. Before you are feeling calm, peaceful, relaxed, the moment that emotion arises, you become restless, agitated. Your mind is disturbed. Whatever calm and peaceful you're feeling there is gone. It takes away that. Through that, that's how we suffer. How we make our life more miserable, unhappy, because of those different negative emotions. The moment it arises, that's what happens. It's nothing very deep philosophy, it's our direct experience. That's our direct experience in our everyday life, if you observe. And not only immediately you experience those effects, but because of those afflictive emotions, then we engage in action through three doors. Or sometimes then due to that, then we have other negative emotions arising out of that. Then, ill will feeling, negative feeling arises. Just by having those negative emotions, ill with feeling, harmful feelings, because now you want to harm others because you are angry. You wish them bad. You wish them miserable. Just by having that negative thoughts, you create the karma. When you wish someone to suffer, when you wish someone miserable, suffering, why we wish that? Because we're upset and angry with that person. Because of that anger. Just by having that negative thought, we create a negative karma through mental actions. Sometimes not only we go further than that, and then we use our speech, harsh words, cursing, all kind of things. Through that, we create another unskillful, unhealthy, unwholesome action through the speech. Sometimes we are not satisfied with cursing and that harshful speech. Physically, we get violent, aggressive. And through that, we create another level of negative karma actions. Sometimes we create 3 levels of negative, all through 3 doors. Sometimes we create through just 2 doors. Sometimes we create just through 1 door on mental level. Still, we create the negative karma. As a consequence, then we experience suffering in the futures, similar experience in the futures. That is, so if you see, we begin to see how all our problem, suffering, arises from those afflictive emotions, directly, indirectly. And of course, there are so many different practices and meditations dealing with those different afflictive emotions. Okay? There are many different meditations, different practices. One, we can use mindfulness meditation in a way that, you learn to be aware of those different emotions, whether it's positive emotion, negative emotion, whatever it arises. You learn to be mindful, be aware of them, recognizing them, but learning to be more kind of equanimity, less judgmental, not giving any kind of fuel to those negative emotions, So when you don't give fuel to those negative emotions, even in the arises, it does not last for long. It comes and goes very quickly. So it doesn't, you don't hold on them, it doesn't remain for a long time, so you don't suffer so much, and you don't create so much strong negative karma. Because it's very momentary, it's momentary, you learn to recognize it, be aware, and let it go. And by being able to do that, definitely, slowly you will have less negative emotion arising because of that technique method. Even it arises is very, very short. Through that, then we learn to have less intense negative emotions, and we learn not to have a long holding on that negative emotions, and not to give fuel to those negative emotions. We just recognize it, be aware, and then kind of let it go immediately, not holding, not giving continuity to that. That is one practice. We can use, kind of shamatha meditations. Through shamatha meditations, you learn to kind of empty your thoughts, except for the mind that is focused on objects. So whatever you are trying to focus on, whatever object that might be, it can be external, internal object of your shamatha, karma meditations. Apart from that mind that is focused on that object, you kind of learn the technique to kind of dissolve all other thoughts, empty all other thoughts, not to have any other thoughts. Just your mind simply focus on one thing without any other emotion, thought, arises, basically. It's not totally emptying your mind, but definitely it's learning to just focus on your whole mind, focus on just one object and not to have any other thoughts. So in that sense, you are emptying other thoughts for that purpose, to have better concentrations, focus without distractions. That's another way of, so through that meditations, then, you do not allow the afflictive emotion to manifest. It's like, in the water, there's a mud. Normally we shake it, so it's muddy, the water is muddy, But when you do this kind of shamatha meditation, you don't shake it. You put the water there, and then if you don't shake it, all the mud will dissolve by itself down there. It will not manifest. And therefore, it will not kind of pollute. You will see the purity of the water and not pollute that. So it's not fully gone there, but it's not polluting on that surface. Similarly, the delusion, because of that, the ability to just focus and and not have any other thoughts. So all these afflictive emotion, which are other thoughts, cannot manifest as long as you have that deep meditations, single point of concentrations, shamatha. It does not manifest. That is one technique. And then there are different analytical meditations dealing with the different negative emotions. When it's come to anger, impatience, anger, hatred, you can meditate on, patience, loving kindness, compassion. Through cultivating loving kindness, compassion, patience, then we're able to, again, reduce the feeling of impatience, anger, hatred, all this. On the other hand, when you have too much attachment to a certain object, then you try to meditate on, essenceless of that object, the meaningless of that object, the unpleasantness of that object, So through that meditations, by seeing the unpleasantness, the unattractiveness, the ugliness, essenceless, then again, the attachment, we see there's, attractiveness in that object. We see, goodness in that object. We see purpose that object, that attachment gets reduced, and again. And so there are different analytical meditations in relation to different negative emotions. Jealousy, we practice rejoicing, as an antidote for that. For the arrogant or pride, there's a practice of humility, which act as antidote. So there are many different practice or antidotes that act as individual practice, which act as individual antidote to those individual different negative emotions. But still, all of those different meditations and practice, as much as they're powerful meditations, as much as they can help us to reduce the negative emotions, but it cannot get rid of the root of negative emotions completely until you have the wisdom realizing emptiness. That is why wisdom realizing emptiness is the key. With the kind of mindfulness meditation that I spoke before, it still arises. You recognize and you don't get involved with that. It doesn't remain long time. It doesn't arise often, but still when you sudden cause and condition, those negative emotion arises, still arises. It's not as harmful as before because you have certain technique, but still it arises. It is still there because, the root of those delusions is ignorance still there. As long as the root of those affected emotions, the ignorance is there, they will continue to arise when the cause and condition come together. So it is not a permanent solution. If you want to really get rid of all this delusion completely, not just kind of reducing them, if it can be completely abandoned, why not go for that? So therefore, that. And same with shamatha meditations. With the shamatha meditations, even though it stopped from manifesting it as long as you did meditation, but when you are not did meditation, it will manifest, it's still there. It is still there. It's like you haven't shake it, but if you started to shake a little bit, then it will come, the mud will come there. At the moment, the technique is not to shake it. So, but the moment you are not that deep meditations on that kind of shamatha, deep meditations, then certain cause and condition comes and then it will manifest. And then, because again, you haven't get rid from the bottom of it, you haven't get root of from the very root of it. In order to get from the very root of it, you have to go to the very root of all these affected emotions, the fundamental ignorance. And to overcome that fundamental ignorance, you need the wisdom realizing emptiness. That is why it's so important. Same with, true meditation, loving kindness, and compassion. You can reduce and overcome anger, hatred to some level, but still you cannot overcome the subtle level of anger. In order to overcome the most subtle level of anger, you need to have wisdom realizing emptiness. The subtle level of anger. Through meditation on loving kindness, compassion, you can definitely overcome gross level of anger, gross level of hatred feelings. But the subtle level that is rooted in very subtle level, that ignorance, you cannot. And to overcome even the most subtle level of the anger, you need to have the wisdom to overcome all subtle attachments and all other affected emotions. You need to have the wisdom realizing emptiness. With other different technique meditations, it can help you to reduce the gross level, but not the most subtle level. Also, with other meditations, it's a different. You need different analytical meditation with a different negative emotions. But when you use the meditation on emptiness, you can overcome with one that weapons of that wisdom, the sword of the wisdom. You can cut the root of all the different afflictive emotions. By cutting the very root of all the different afflictive emotions, you are able to overcome all the afflictive emotions with one that wisdom sword. The wisdom sword relies in emptiness. So therefore, that is why the wisdom relies in emptiness is so important, so important. So important. Therefore, the Buddha says in the Sutra of King of Concentration, he said that you try to analyze on the selflessness or emptiness of the persons. Once you analyze on the selflessness of the persons, meditate on that. So you can develop the wisdom realizing that selflessness. Because without that wisdom that comes through meditation on emptiness, there's no other way to achieve liberations. There's no other way. There's no other way to go beyond state, beyond the sorrow, liberation. And same, Nagarjuna says, same without, understanding the wisdom realizing emptiness, the sentient being will continue to circle in the samsara, continue to circle in the samsara without wisdom realizing emptiness. Same Lama Tsongkhapa said, in his three principal experiential path, even you have developed pure renunciations and bodhicitta mind, but if you have not developed wisdom realizing emptiness, you will not be able to free from the samsara and the cause of samsara. And therefore you will continue to circle in the samsara and continue to experience the suffering of samsara. So from there, then we know, the importance. That is why we need to have the wisdom realizing emptiness. And in order to have wisdom realizing emptiness, then we need to study and learn and meditate on that. How to meditate on emptiness. Learning, studying, what is emptiness? What is emptiness? And how to meditate on that emptiness. And through that, by meditating on emptiness, how can we cultivate the wisdom realizing the emptiness? And by having developed the wisdom realizing the emptiness, how can we make progress gradually on the path to enlightenment? And the Heart Sutra explain that. The Heart Sutra explain that. In one of the sutras, Buddhas explain, how, studying on Prasanaparamita sutras that explain about the emptiness, how important it is. Maybe if I might read, it might be the actual word itself. In Tibetan is called Kyu Rinchen Jinpe Do, like Kyu is like kind of child, Rinchen Jinpa, I think it is the name in that show, It says, Menjushri, the Bodhisattvas, whose lack the skillful means, even the practice in 6 perfections for thousands of eons. More than that, someone, even with the doubt, who listen to this teaching of personal paramita will attain much more merit. Therefore, and without doubt, if we listen, what more there is to say, and then not only listening, if you write it, if you recite it, teach it, and so forth, it creates even more merit. And similarly, the Aryadeva, one of the great Indian masters, the disciple of Nagarjuna, he says in his 400 verses, in order to even to hear a teaching on emptiness, it requires a lot of merit. If you don't have enough merit, you wouldn't even hear about the teaching on emptiness. Even having a doubt about emptiness, we shatter the root of the samsara. Even with the doubt. And when you really reflect on that, it's so true. It shakes the root of the samsara, the root of the delusions. Before, we follow the ignorance. Ignorance is our boss. We are the slave of the ignorance. Never caution the ignorance. The ignorance grabs or perceives everything that we see, everything that we hear, everything we smell, everything we taste, everything we touch, everything that comes in thought, we perceive them to existing from their own side, objectively. And we believe the way it perceives it. We never caution that. We just believe the appearance and the perceptions. Now, when you started cautions, when you have done cautions, that is how things, object appear, but does really that object appear that way or not? That is how your mind used to perceive, but does the object really exist the way you perceived it that way or not? So you started to have doubt. And when you started to doubt, the ignorance that was feeling so comfortable before now is suddenly shaky. It's like a leader that has never been cautioned before. Everyone just follow what they said. And now someone's raising cautions, saying, they have some doubt. The moment someone raises cautions, the leader started to be a little bit nervous, a little bit shaky. Now they see there's some challenge. Same thing, our ignorance was like that later. We never questioned before. We just believe whatever the ignorance said. We believe that was how reality is. That's how things are. But now, when you study, learn about emptiness, even you have doubt, even you are not 100% sure whether that is that how things really exist or not, even just having doubt, started to make that ignorance nervous and shaky. And when that ignorance becomes nervous and shaky, that means the root of the samsara, the root of the problem has been nervous and shaky. So therefore, since the wisdom relies on emptiness so crucial to achieve our highest potential, fully awake, fully enlightened state, or even liberations. Without that wisdom, there's no way to achieve that. And even in our life, if we have wisdom realizing emptiness, it will make our life much more better. Even you don't think of enlightenment, even you are not interested in enlightenment, okay? Even you are not interested in enlightenment, even you want to have a more calm, peaceful, happy life, the wisdom realizing emptiness will help you a lot with that. As Lama Tsongkhapa explained it in his Lamrim Chemo, someone, even you have all the abundance of the samsara, all the wealth, all the fame, everything that you can imagine, even if you have everything, but still not attached to them, and still have pure renunciations. It's possible because of the wisdom. If you have the wisdom, realizing the emptiness, even if you have all of that, you will not get attached to them. And still you will be able to develop true renunciations. If you don't have wisdom, then when you have fame, wealth, everything, we get temptations and attached to them. We get clinging to them. We don't want to lose them. We don't want to give them, So the wisdom relies on the emptiness, help us to develop the pure renunciations. Also, without the wisdom, relies on the emptiness, when we try to meditate on loving kindness, compassions, or when someone practice loving kindness, compassions, and through that practice, when they see and feel the suffering of others, infinite sentient beings suffering, infinite sentient, someone can feel very overwhelmed. Someone might feel very overwhelmed. But if you have that wisdom, realizing emptiness, you will not feel overwhelmed. And it's that wisdom that will help us not to be overwhelmed by seeing and feeling the endless suffering of infinite sentient beings. Otherwise, sometimes we can feel very overwhelmed. We feel that, isn't it? When our friends, relatives, or others, when you see so much suffering, so much pain, sometimes we might feel kind of overwhelmed by all of that. And so you imagine when you kind of understand and feel the pain and suffering of all sentient beings, the way you feel with your dear one and loved one. Can feel very overwhelming. But if you have that wisdom, then you will not feel that overwhelming. The wisdom helps that. Also, with the wisdom, we will not get caught up. Some teachers use this word. I don't know whether that's the right word or idiot comparisons. It's just kind of emotional comparisons. Like for example, you see someone drowning, in the water, and you don't know how to swim, you don't know how to help, and you just jump it. And by jumping it, out of that emotional comparisons, nor you are able to help that person, and you drown yourself. That will be kind of idiot comparisons when you don't have the real wisdom. Your compassion not based or rooted in the wisdom, and when you become kind of emotional, that can be harmful. And also, as Lama Tsongkhapa said, when we feel compassion to our loved one, dear one, near one, what makes it not attachments is the wisdom. If you don't have wisdom, then your compassion can become attachments, turn into attachments. But if you have the wisdom, your compassion towards your loved one, dear one, near one, will not turn into attachment and become an attachment. So that is why we need the wisdom. If you have wisdom, while you can enjoy everything in this life, still not get distracted. If you don't have the wisdom, then if we enjoy too much, we can get distracted from our practice, from our path. But when you have that wisdom, then it helps you while you enjoy, at the same time not being distracted from the path, not losing the path. So that wisdom being so important, crucial on the path, and especially when it comes to the Vajrayana Tantric practice. We all start from emptiness. Everything's whatever objects transforming into emptiness, from emptiness, wisdom realizing emptiness, transforming that object, whether it's visualizing yourself, the deity, or whether you're visualizing the deity in front of you, or whether you are transforming the offering, everything. It all starts with that. If you don't have understanding, it's just imagining. At the moment, we are just imagining it. Unless you have really wisdom realizing emptiness. But when you have really wisdom realizing emptiness, you are not imagining, you are actually cultivating through that wisdom. And that wisdom, then you transform into whatever that particular deity or whatever mandala, whatever. And then, because of that, then you have no more clinging to the mandala, to yourself. Otherwise, you visualize yourself deity and you might be clinging to that deity. Do you get it? You visualize as a Yamataka, but you are still clinging very strongly to that Yamataka. Inherently existing Yamataka there. Or you visualize as a Manjushri, whatever deity, and you are holding that very grasping very strongly that inherently existing Manjushri, whatever deity it is. Even though you think it is a deity, but still you are grasping very strongly. Because we don't have that wisdom. Once you have that wisdom lies in emptiness, then then you don't have any more grasping to that. And so therefore, that is so important, so that our practice become effective, powerful. And in order to have that, so since the heart of the main subjects of is that, that wisdom relies in the emptiness. So therefore, that is why we need to study, learn, practice meditation on emptiness. That is the main reason. That is the main reason. That is the main point of studying and meditating on Heart Sutra. So with that, I think maybe I will stop, and I will take a few questions. If there is any questions. Yes, please.
You were talking about how when you have the wisdom realizing emptiness, it helps you overcome your renunciation. Would that just be conceptual wisdom realizing emptiness, not perceptual?
Yes, even with the realization of emptiness, with the conceptions, still it will help very much to develop higher renunciation, to develop stronger compassions, and to develop stronger faith in the Dharma, in the Buddha, Sangha,
And that conceptual wisdom realizing emptiness, you can also get not just with meditation but through study. Yes, is that right? Through study also.
Yes, when we hear the meditation, I wouldn't try to differentiate studying and meditation separately.
Yeah.
Okay? When you talk about meditation, there are many different kinds of meditations, and especially when it comes to emptiness, we use analytical meditations. And part of studying is analytical meditations because you are constantly contemplating, the nature of what's the nature of the self or the aggregates, whatever, if it exists truly, it must be that it therefore is not inherent in existence. So that kind of analyzing, that is a meditation. Whether you do when you are studying, you do that, or you are sitting and you are still doing that when you are sitting and on the cushion, still with the meditation is more or less that. So therefore, definitely, we call analytical meditations, and in study, that is part of analytical meditation. You are analyzing, examining the nature of the phenomena, nature of things, and therefore there are certain stories about certain teachers, masters having a realization on emptiness while they are debating. In the moment of the debating, when they are in the moment of debate, and at a different instant when they are studying in that way. Yeah. Yes, please. Yes, please.
I have one question from online.
Okay.
So this person's asking, Geshe, would you please explain why in the second and third turnings of the wheel of Dharma, the Gelug school considers the second turning to be definitive, as as opposed to provisional.
Mhm. Yes. Nagarjuna and Chandraketis, you know, and those who follow Nagarjuna, especially, you know, Nagarjuna, Asanga, and Chandraketis, you know, in their writing, through their writing, especially Chandraketis' writing, is quite clear, you know, when they try to explain how, you know, the teachings on how everything is empty of inherent existence is the definite meanings and definite or the ultimate meaning of the Buddha's intent, and that is taught in the second turning wheel of the Dharma. And so therefore that is definitely because, you know, there's no more, in one way, there's no more subtle understanding of emptiness than understanding of emptiness from the point of view of that they are empty of non-existence. And so there is no need to interpret that there is more higher meaning or more deeper meaning to that meaning than something else. And so therefore that point of view then is a definitive meaning. And that sutra is regarded as such the Prasna Paramita Sutras, which are part of the second turning wheel of the Dharma, as being the definitive. And that is, you know, if you read Chandrakiri's writing, then it's quite clear. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
No, the person just said thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, please.
My understanding of the realization of emptiness and why renunciation becomes possible is because the sense of self disappears or is seen as non-abiding, and that's the mechanism for why renunciation is automatic, because there's no self to cling.
Mm-hmm.
Can you comment on that?
Yes, when you have realization in emptiness, you know, you see the self to not to exist from inherently, as you said, and there's no object of self to cling on. That's one. There's no person who's clinging or attached to objects. Also, you also see or understand also the object that we're attached to is also empty of existence from its own side or inherent existence. So again, there's no object to get attached to. So if there is no object to get attached to, inherent existing object to get attached to, and there is no person who is inherent existing that is being attached or attached to, and there is no attachment itself that exists inherently that is attached to that object. So when you understand that, then definitely, you know, you wouldn't have attachments. And if there's no attachment, renunciations comes when you give up that attachment. Renunciation is the giving of the attachment. It's not the external object, it's the internal objects. You know, when you are free from the attachment, the internal object of attachments, it doesn't matter whether you have external object or not, you know, still you are renounced. And if you have not given up attachment, even if you don't have external objects, still you are not renounced because you are still attached to something. Okay. So then we'll do the dedications. Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If we, try to remember emptiness in our everyday life, is there a risk that maybe some of our actions would be careless or something like that? Can you comment?
Mhm. I think we will discuss more that on tomorrow, definitely. If someone understands emptiness correctly, that shouldn't be any problem. But if someone do not understand emptiness correctly, that can fall in the kind of nihilism, then there is that danger, careless. Because misunderstanding emptiness, then there you begin to think, oh, there's no virtue, there's no non-virtues, there's no moral, there's no immoral, there's no good, there's no bad. So therefore, whatever I do, is okay. Because the moment I say is moral, immoral, it is dualistic. And if I understand correctly emptiness, then I shouldn't have dualistic view. And so they were just thinking of, oh, this is right to do, this is not right to do, is a dualist. And therefore, it's not even, I shouldn't even think about that. That's due to a lot of misunderstanding and emptiness. It can happen due to but when it is correct understanding emptiness, that wouldn't contradict the conventional reality. This one, misunderstanding, then reject the conventional reality. And that is where the problem comes. The danger of being careless. There's because there's a rejection of conventional reality. But when someone has correct realization in emptiness, there's no rejection of conventional reality, but it enforces the conventional reality. And so, yeah. That would be the dedications.
So we're on page 8. Turn the next page for the long update. Accordance with the various dispositions of those to be subdued, makes clear in the light of your well-spoken advice the sacred and tradition, lessons of Buddhist teachings, for foremost and holy Dharma, to you as we make this prayer of supplication. O Lama, please with us.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good night. Thank you. Good night.